Hello, everyone. I'm Gemma Star, and welcome to another episode of Man Speak. This series is an offshoot to our Heart Warrior series, and if you haven't seen our Heart Warrior series, you probably want to check it out. It's a series where I'm interviewing at least 100 men and finding out about their journey into the heart, what challenges they overcame, and what tools, practices, wisdom have they got now to share with other men walking that path. And of course, there's other women that want to get a better understanding of our men. But this series, Man Speak, is one where some of the men had a subject close to their heart that was way too expansive to fit onto Heart Warriors. So I've invited them back to do another episode where they can share their experience and embodiment and teachings around certain topics. Today's guest is our Heart Warrior number 19, and that's a man called Kevin Orosz. And his chosen subject today is relationship mastery and polarity dynamics. Fascinating subject. And if you've got any relationship issues, it's really one that's worth bringing an awareness and educating ourselves around. So it's my great pleasure to welcome Kevin onto the show, and please enjoy. Hello, Kevin. Welcome to Man Speak.
Hello, Gemma. Great to be here with you.
Yeah. And as I said in my intro, you're our number 19 Heart Warrior. So, yeah, good number. Right. This topic fascinates me, and learning and educating myself in this, the relationship, the polarity dynamics really helped me understand a lot about myself, a lot about men, and a lot about relationships. Where would you like to start? Maybe people that have no awareness of what relationship polarity is.
Right. I mean, I think it's such a powerful kind of framework or tool set to just understand masculine and feminine energy. You know, this has nothing to do with gender or sexuality per se, although it does, because that's the domain it plays out in. It's just understanding that we live in a dual universe. Men and women have significant differences. You know, we're more alike than we are different, but the differences are significant and sacred. And all of our ancestors understood this. And obviously, all of our ancestors successfully mated, had children, lived together, grew together for better or worse. And so there's dynamics that have formed. Some of this is evolutionary biology and our, instincts and the dating psychology and, deep sexual instinctual stuff. Some of it is energetic, and it's actually about the beautiful dance between, the penetrative presence, consciousness, expansion of the masculine, of provision, protection, and the aliveness, the eros, the dance, the ever-changing nurture and love and deep somatic energy of the feminine. And it's real, and you can experience it. Everyone experiences it. Same-sex couples, non-binary couples, they'll still have this energetic pole. It's like a battery. There's a positive and negative pole, and that's how you run a current. And I think a lot of people would be well served, even if they don't resonate with the term polarity or, like the various people that have taken this, as authors, coaches, therapists, whatever. You don't have to resonate with any of that. It's just about, are you getting the love you want? Are you in a relationship that's compatible, healthy, and juicy and erotic? And do you understand what dynamics are playing out, right? Whether it's in the bedroom or the boardroom.
Yeah, that's so true. I think before we get into all the really good, juicy stuff, maybe we should just have a rundown of how this natural dance between the masculine and feminine has been attacked, maybe we could probably reduce it to the last century. Would you like to give us a recap on that?
I mean, I think it goes beyond the last century, and there's evidence of, you can go into a rabbit hole here. And if you go back to ancient Rome, right, and the spread of empire and colonization and basically warlike imperialism, this really fucks up the family unit, because it conditions men to be pillagers and soldiers and causes them to be used in this way, whether it's in business and economic warfare, or actually physical warfare. Therefore, the women are left to tend to the children and raise them alone. And also they become the victims under this structure, and the women and children in many cases. So it really goes back to, I don't think that there was this Eden paradise utopia of our ancestors living in the village and living in this beautiful partnership society that some people paint. I mean, obviously that was true at some point, because we have this like longing as human beings to go back to this, some have called it, like Terence McKenna, the archaic revival of, living with the land, living in harmony with nature and God or spirit and each other, men and women. And I think that's real. And there's something deep in our DNA. And, for a long time, we've had to survive, whether it's nature or other tribes or wild animals or famine or, drought or war. Men and women have had to survive and do this together, right? And to raise children and continue the species. So there's a lot here to unpack. Now, if you want to zoom into the more recent attacks on masculinity and femininity in the family unit, you can do your own research, and I would encourage everyone listening to do that. Don't take anything I'm saying as fact. Find out for yourself. Look up the Frankfurt School, which rose in the 19-teens and 20s in Europe. And these are the folks that brought you things like gender. This idea of gender and gender roles was never, this was not a term. It was invented, created, and curated to be given to, intellectuals in the liberal class and universities. There was also a specific agenda, by many organizations. I won't even name them because, I want people to really find this out, but to create workers, right? So industrial culture, it's like, you used to be able to, on one wage, the man's wage, even if he was a simple, worker of the land, to support his wife, his children, even his grandparents, and other people in the village, just off one wage. And then, there's this idea that women should enter the workforce too and leave the children to caretake somewhere else. And then everyone wants to work. And they're hardly spending time with the children. Most of their conditioning is to be a consumer or a worker in an industrial machination. And so you can just go down all these rabbit holes. All the while, the food, the water, now, is it from ignorance and incompetence? I don't know. Is it by agenda? I don't know. But the amount of endocrine blockers that have completely devastated testosterone rates in men since, this has been measured since the 1930s. And for women, the amount of infertility and, also endocrine hormone blockers that have affected women and their reproductive system. Again, we didn't start measuring this stuff until the 20th century. So who knows how long this is happening. But long story short, there are forces on this planet that do not want sovereign, strong, masculine and feminine beings in loving partnership, because that's a very hard unit to manipulate, control, and break, because it forms the basis of the village.
Beautiful. And that's what I wanted to bring an encapsulated understanding of, to know that we have been attacked. And so where do we go from here about restructuring the healthy relationships and family unit? So how would you describe, do you use the terms wounded masculinity and femininity and healthy masculinity or femininity? What terms do you like to use when describing?
I think that's better than toxic. Wounded is accurate.
Yeah, totally agree. So let's understand, how would you describe a wounded masculine man? Because until someone has awareness, they can't change, right?
Sure.
So what's your typical wounded masculine man?
Yeah, the core masculine wound is the fear of failure, or the fear of not being good enough, right? Not being lovable or worthy. This is the core masculine essence, because the masculine gift, or at the very core of most men, is wanting to be of service, wanting to fulfill their mission, dharma, purpose, and provide, right? Whether that's love for their wife or their woman, whether that's their mission, giving their gift to the world, their art, their business. It's all about provision and fulfillment of that purpose. It's giving your gift to the world. It's loving the world. And that takes a specific action, right, in the world.
Yes.
So the opposite of that is the fear of failure, or not giving your gift, not being worthy of love from God, from your fellow men, and also from the feminine. And so a lot of wounded men, you know, we all have this, and it's a lifelong journey. It's not like, all right, I'm healed and whole, you know, I'm done, I can just do whatever I want now. It's like, this is a lifelong journey.
Yeah.
We're all living with intergenerational and personal trauma, and it's just real. We're on a traumatized planet. And that's sacred. That's also where the gifts come. Now, most wounded men are in control. So if they can't receive love, or they don't trust life to bring them love, they have to control. And so the extreme of this is the tyrant or the dominator, who will abuse and attack other men and women to get love and force respect or love, which isn't real love. And this is from a very insecure place. There's other men, that's kind of one extreme. This is where the narcissists, sociopaths, psychopaths come in, which, you know, let's be fair, the most extreme atrocities that humanity has seen has been these kinds of men, which is why there's so much fear of them, and why things like Me Too and toxic masculinity and all this have come about. It's a natural antidote or antibody in the extreme to this extreme form of the masculine, which is the tyrant, the killer, the mass murderer, you know, the dark lord, whatever. Yeah. This is not good. And this is a deep well of pain in the masculine. The other side, which is much more common, I see this with clients way more. I see this with most men out there that are struggling to get, you know, love from the feminine or be successful in relationships, or struggling with finance and business, is the people pleaser. It's the collapsed masculine. It's the mama's boy. It's like trying to play it safe, play it small, dampening their primal power, their libido, maybe their rage, their resentment, and putting on the mask, fitting in, dampening their energy to please. And they can be very manipulative and very, you know, wounding, and sharing their wounding, projecting it onto the world because they put on the nice guy face. And this one is very dangerous as an implosion, because those men are very susceptible to depression, anxiety, you know, intense traumas of the internal. The other type, the tyrant, is the explosion. So these are the men that are more physically violent or abusive. So, you know, those are the two kind of sides of the spectrum.
Fascinating. Okay, let's look at wounded femininity. What does she look like? Well, I say she because, you know.
Yeah. I mean, this one's interesting. And again, I didn't choose this, but a lot of my work and most of my audience online is women and feminine beings. So, you know, I've just had a front row seat to this with my coaching and, you know, speaking work. A lot of women, again, there's a spectrum, and I'll paint the extremes. A lot of women, instead of physical violence or, you know, financial violence, which is what men choose, either warfare or economic violence, women have the violence of the emotional world, or the psychic violence, and reputation violence, or like gossip, basically. And so the extreme feminine on the external is the, you know, the queen tyrant, basically, or the, you know, the dark mother has been called. There's all these ideas of it. And this is the woman who is very volatile emotionally and expresses this, dominates, and cuts down others using emotion, using manipulation psychologically. And so these are the women that become the kind of alpha females that will dominate and cut down other women, also sexually or emotionally manipulate men. Very dramatic, very intense, can be very narcissistic. But from the feminine side, it's very slippery, right? Because the feminine just presents differently than the masculine.
Right.
And then on the other side, again, you have the good girl, the people pleaser on the feminine side, which is very common, more common, I'd say, per capita, that these women get walked all over. They become doormats for their partners, for other men and women, at work, at, you know, their social scene. And they're manipulative, but from a smile and from a soft place of not taking up too much space, not using their voice, you know, not being too sexually attractive, not being too loud, and then using manipulation, using resentment, and hidden, imploded, you know, fear of getting love, fear of being nurtured, to get their needs met, right? And this causes a lot of destruction, obviously, when they have children, when they have partners, when they have people depending on them.
Great breakdown. So let's say there's a man or a woman watching that says, oh, that sounds like me. And let's start with, and I know I'll put all your links in at the end, but let's start at the lower end of the financial scale. People who haven't yet got the resources to go to and pay for a professional coach. Where can they start unpacking this journey and trying to heal this this wound in them?
Yeah, I mean, this is where I direct every single person that comes to me, even if they can't afford a single session or if they want to work with me for a year. It's like, you need to find a men and women circle. It's the most ancient technology all your ancestors had. This is the main reason that divide and conquer has worked and isolated and caused so much mental illness in the world today. You need to be surrounded by other men or other women that you can trust, that will challenge you and love you where you're not strong or where you have blind spots, and also celebrate, fight, play, build with you, create with you. It's both sides. This gets lost because people think, oh, that's just for therapy, or oh, that's just for those kinds of people, and it's not true. You're doing this automatically when you hang out with your friends. It's just you're not doing it intentionally. And no matter where you are, even if you're isolated and there's no one in your town that's doing this, there's tons of this online. Mm-hmm. And I bet you'd be surprised that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other men or women within an hour drive of you that want the same thing. And you might just have to be the catalyst for that.
Right. Awesome. Are there any, how did you teach yourself about polarity?
I mean, trial and error and a lot of failure is how I even came to it. Is just wasn't being successful in relationships and what was going on. Mm-hmm. And also just examining myself. And, I've always been, something of a philosopher, psychologist, and that's what I thought I was going to do professionally in the academic sense before I became an entrepreneur. But I was constantly analyzing myself, constantly trying to figure out, what's going on here. It wasn't until I got into yoga and yogic philosophy, and also into Taoism and Qigong and Taoist philosophy that, start reading about yin and yang, Shiva, Shakti, the forms of Tantra or practices that they share, both the sexual alchemy and the emotional. And then, I found Mantak Chia, who's an amazing author that writes about sexual polarity and transmutation. And I also then found Deida, who's the classic kind of entryway for most people into polarity.
Yeah. Which of his books would you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, the classic book is The Way of the Superior Man. I would recommend men and women read that, but mostly men. And then the feminine version, which can be a little more softer of an entry into the work for the feminine, is called Dear Lover. So I'd recommend that one to women.
Oh, great. I'll put those links below. So how does this woundedness in a masculine or a feminine affect a relationship? Can you give us some solid examples so people can recognize themselves if they're coming from that place in your examples?
I mean, any place that you are trauma bonding or confusing a trigger, an emotional instability, a repeating thought, physical or somatic pain or dysregulation of the nervous system with, attraction, love, getting your needs met intimately, or this can happen at work, right? This can happen with colleagues or friends where these patterns keep coming up. And you got to get curious. If something's happening more than once and it's repeating, that's an indicator that you could look at that. And so that's kind of the doorway in, is everyone has this, what's not working, what's in the shadow. The shadow is just what you're not seeing, feeling, or noticing. And it'll appear indirectly at first, and then sometimes it'll get very loud.
Okay. So I'm interested now in abusive relationships. So why is it that a woman attracts an abusive man? And often they'll say that they're not wounded, they are the loving one, and they're just attracting wounded men because they're there to heal them, or they're some connection from high above. But I've always said, because I've been in that situation and I can see myself, that even though I was apparently the loving unconditionally, the sweet little angel, I know I was wounded back then because I didn't have self-honor to stay in that relationship. Can you articulate that better than me?
Well, I know what you're pointing at, and what's really valuable, and there's a lot of work out there on this from holistic psychologists and psychotherapists around the the victim, savior, perpetrator triangle, right? And this is the classic dynamic. A lot of those women that you're describing are playing out the victim perfectly. They're giving an all-star performance, right? And it feels good because they're the nurturer, right? This is where the empath or the victim attracts, you know, the narcissist or the perpetrator. And there's sparks there. The sex might be great. There might be a lot of energy, you know. The trauma and instability and dysregulation of that dynamic can be hot or very like attractive to the nervous system, because a lot of us as children, we learn to receive love from the mom and dad, even if they weren't present, or especially if they were abusive or, you know, dysregulated present. That is how we get love. So we actually formed these neurons and these attractions with like, oh, this means love. And then this carries on into our adulthood and into our romantic life. So a lot of women are playing out victim, playing out the empath, playing out nurturer, and then they become the savior. They try to save the man from his pain by taking it on.
Yes.
And this is unfortunately a very, you know, ripe environment for abuse.
And I mean, for me, that was like 20 years ago. You know, I was in a 10-year relationship, but I can remember thinking the love of a good woman, if I love him enough, if I'm good enough, he's got to come round and realize one day. Where was the flaw in my thinking?
Yeah. I mean, that implies that the man is aware, conscious, and challenging himself to be better in all ways and question blind spots and these traumatic patterns, which unfortunately, if they're buried in the subconscious and they're in blind spots, he simply won't. He'll just take advantage of the love being given. And again, it's probably because his father didn't know how to deal with that, and his father didn't. So a lot of this stuff's being passed down. These generations on the earth right now are breaking these traumatic cycles, and it's hard work.
Yes, yeah. I love that. I love how you said that. And a lot of people can recognize themselves. And this understanding is just, you know, just such a huge part of that we can go forth and heal the masculine, the feminine. So what direction do we need to take this conversation in now, Kevin, to get out all the information we need to get out today?
Yeah, I mean, what comes up is the kind of core recipe here, which is number one, men and women's circles, men and women's work. You know, maybe you're not called to retreats or workshops or coaching or therapy, but just having that core unit of men or women around you that love, support, and trust you and are willing to challenge you will really set the stage for everything else. Now, along with that, you probably want some of those men and women to be modeling healthy relationship and polarity to you. So that means sexually active, interested, alive, and sovereign. So they're not, you know, codependent, but they're also not, you know, in their own worlds. They're interdependent. And that comes from a sense of sovereignty, ownership, and accountability. And when you find those couples or those people, those are treasures. And those are people that you want to get to know, be vulnerable with, you know, reciprocate with, and learn from. So a lot of people just don't have a framework or reference of what a healthy relationship is. You need that. And then, you know, go ahead.
No, please. Well, okay. Yeah, okay. So we looked at the wounded side. We can get into what a healthy relationship looks like, but let's break it down first to what does healthy masculine energy look like and healthy feminine energy look like?
Yeah, I mean, this will look different for everyone, but some of the markers or themes for the masculine, you know, a very powerful masculine man, you know, this isn't like a machismo Hollywood action hero. You know, this is a caricature. This man could be a gardener, could be a single dad, could be a janitor, you know, farmer. Doesn't need to be a grandiose image, but what is he doing? How does he show up? Well, he's going to be rooted in provision, protection, and the masculine penetrative love, which is his consciousness, his presence. So you can tell a strong man by his loving presence and awareness. How many things can he track and keep aware of at one time? How much provision is he offering? There's many types of provision, right? Financial is one, which is obviously important. There's emotional provision, sexual, psychological provision. And then there's protection. A strong man's going to be a protector of the feminine, of children, of animals, of nature, of God. He's a protector. He's a guardian. And so that means he might be dangerous. He might be strong. He might be physically strong. He might be trained in martial arts or sports or whatever. And that's sacred. So those are some of those masculine qualities. Every man's going to find his own way to them. For the feminine, it's all about her ability to receive. So the feminine energy, essence, and physicality is all about receiving. How surrendered, open, and sensitive to life is she? And can she respond in the moment with her eros, her open heart, her body, her emotion, her voice? So these women are just magnets. Life follows them and charges them. Children and animals love them. Men find them irresistible. They're very artistic, creative, and nurturing. And they can be fierce and wild, like Mother Nature. They can crash like an ocean storm. They have a lot of range of expression. But they're rooted in opening as love and responding to life with softness and with the fury. But they allow all of it. So their heart is open, they're responsive, and these are the most attractive partners, mothers, and muses, right? So those are kind of the ideals that you find that we're all manifesting to a greater or lesser degree.
So what about a woman who says, well, wow, I'd love to be so open-hearted and sensitive and nurturing, but if I do that, I don't feel safe. I feel threatened by, I'm going to be emotionally abused or physically abused. How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, this is the real tragedy of the civilization we've built and we live and we inherited, is the feminine has been suppressed. The feminine has been made unsafe and exploited in many ways. And not just women, but the feminine essence in men as well. So this is what we have to understand here. The feminine thrives in safety. Safety is how she opens. You have to create a garden and an energetic shield and a loving container for the flower to blossom of the feminine heart. And this is not easy. It starts with you. It is an inside job. So those women that keep allowing abusers or perpetrators to cross their boundaries, they need to build up their inner strength and boundary work and accountability to themselves. It is an inside job. No one can honor those boundaries if you're not honoring your own. So it does start inside. It starts with other women around you, surrounding yourself with healthy women that will nurture and care for you and call you out on your bullshit. And then it's about, not allowing in masculine energy that's unsafe.
Yes.
And I see this all the time with clients. They want this kind of masculine who's very strong, protective, safe, loving, devotional, but they keep saying yes to advances, casual date, sex with the opposite because it's available and because they're getting their needs met, and that's okay. But you have to, at some point, start being discerning as the feminine, because the feminine are the gatekeepers of sexuality, ideally, right? So the feminine is going to allow you into her body, allow you into the sexual space. That's her sacred choice. She's choosing what mate she wants, Whereas men, the masculine, are the gatekeepers of relationship. It's the man that proposes. It's the man that claims and says, you're mine. We're doing this. Come with me. So you have to understand that dance. And for a lot of women that don't feel safe, it's because they're actually complicit in their unsafety.
Yes, so powerful, because that's so true. Wow. And, I really sort of, from, back 20 years ago, really sort of been aware of this. So what I learned on my journey, Kevin, was that I had to cultivate a healthy masculine within me, but at a point where it was just dormant, but it was there if I needed it. So that way that, okay, I could be with men, but if I needed to call on my masculine because I felt unsafe, it was always within me. Can you expand on that at all? Say it in a way better than me.
I think you're
I can
saying
write it, but I can't articulate
you're saying
it.
it in a great way. I mean, this is very important. This is the inner union, right?
Yeah.
Cultivating your contrasexual pole, your opposite, right? the yin and the yang. Jung called them the anima and the animus. Yeah, this is very sacred for women to cultivate their inner masculine, their own protection, provision of themselves, to be able to hold themselves. A lot of women that are creating a lot or building a business are going to have to do this. And similarly, men will have to create and cultivate space for their safety of their inner feminine. And this is the work a lot of men go into when they enter plant medicine or emotional alchemy or what have you, is they come face to face with these things and actually have to create that relationship. And this is really powerful. A whole human being, in the Hermetic tradition, and a lot of these ancient kind of perennial philosophers called this the hieros gamos, or the inner union of masculine and feminine, of sun and moon. And it's almost like a super human endeavor, because if you can really bring that online in yourself, you become more of a complete human being while still presenting and enacting your main essence, right? So for most men, that'll be masculine. For most women, that'll be feminine. There are twin-spirited beings or two-spirited beings that all indigenous cultures recognized. Basically, all indigenous cultures just recognize 3 genders. There's some that, can play with other versions, but there's just 3. There's masculine, there's feminine, and there's 2 spirits, which is the non-binary spectrum. And that makes a lot of sense, right? You can kind of see that. I think some folks in the world right now, which, bless their journey. I mean, I think it's a reaction to how much control and structuring has happened for people's expression. But
Right.
ultimately, yeah, you're going to play within those energetics, because that's what we have and we've inherited from, millions of years of human evolution.
Yeah, you can't create new energy with different dynamics, right? The energy stays the same. Did we touched on healthy masculinity? Did we get to healthy femininity?
We described it a little bit.
Yeah. Did you have any more to add on that?
I mean, really, for the healthy feminine essence, it's going to be different for every woman in her journey. But these women they literally are healers and nurturers of everything around them. So they're the core inner circuit of the village, the home, the relationship. And they are Shakti. So they are the one that's going to inspire and fill the masculine partner with just desire and devotion, and just, her aliveness when she's safe and when she's open is just going to inspire the field, right? It's also what makes a great mother. I think motherhood is so sacred, and obviously the great gift of the feminine is they create and hold life. And so to deny that and to move away from that, it's going to be tough to embody healthy feminine energy. Although there are some women that are the exception, not the rule, that are called to be childless. And these are the more shamanic medicine women who their children are basically their work, right, their medicine working, their gifts, their artistry. And they're often healers or oracles or seers.
Now, there's a lot of talk in the polarity circles about submission. I prefer the word surrender. What do you use?
Yeah, this is a great topic. I actually did a whole masterclass on this, and we'll probably return to it in another masterclass. I like, because I love language. I love the etymology. Submission gets a bad rap because people think about it as like something like weak, like submitting or submission is weakness, which is complete opposite of the truth as I see it. Because if you break down the etymology, it's just submission, which is the Latin for like below the mission or below the directive. And that doesn't mean a bad thing. That means you're putting yourself below the mission or directive of life or of God, of goddess. And then that, if it's being embodied by the healthy masculine, you're actually putting yourself underneath. Sub just means below. It doesn't mean you're less than. So this is kind of the mind fuck with the language here.
Yeah.
Being below, it means you're actually the support. You're the bedrock and foundation underneath the energy. So as the feminine, this is a place of power. Now, yes, there's a difference between submission and surrender. And this is how I see it and how I've seen it play out with a lot of clients in their dating lives. You can surrender as the feminine And even as a man, you feel like you have a boss, or you're being led in the jungle by a guide. You have to surrender to their leadership in the moment.
Right.
You get an Uber, you get a taxi, you need to surrender to the driver. You're not trying to take the wheel and tell him where to go. You're surrendered because you're being led, you're being contained in that situation. Now, in dating, the feminine can surrender on a first date and be like, oh, take me out. Like, where are we going? You ask the questions, I'll share my energy, we'll feel into each other. That's surrender. And this can obviously deepen in the relationship. It goes a few layers deep, and it's very powerful. Now, submission, you would never submit to a man that wasn't holding you with loyalty, devotion. There's a lot of trust built. So most women, this is the difference also between dating and courtship. Most women, you shouldn't submit to anyone but like your husband or your king, father of your children. Then submission becomes a holy act of sacred surrender, or like surrender at such a deep level. And this isn't just sexual, although sexual is like kind of the Mount Everest of the experience. It's the ecstasy and the erotic healing that can happen there. But it's also just energetically and emotionally. You would fully submit to a man who has proven his worthiness, his devotion, his love is so powerful. His leadership, his dominance, his primal masculine energy is so powerful and committed to you. And you feel so safe. So submission can only happen with safety, which is why most people don't like it. And it's very triggering. Is because when submission happens without safety, it's trauma. And when dominance is expressed without safety, it's abuse.
And this is where I think a lot of surface level stuff gets understood in polarity without people going into the depths of it. So is it now the case where some men will get an understanding of polarity, and some women, and they're like, oh, okay, well, now you have to submit to me, and I want a submissive woman, without understanding his responsibility to make the woman feel safe, not just physically, but emotionally is a huge one.
Yeah.
How does a man make a woman feel emotionally safe?
Yeah, this is great. This is really this is one of the number one questions women are asking, right? All the time. For the masculine, and this is what a lot of men don't understand because they didn't have it modeled to them by their father, which is the great tragedy of the masculine wound and the lineages. Just a lot of men have not had this space held for them by other men, so they don't know how to hold it for a woman. If you want to be a safe place emotionally for a woman to submit to you and to go to those deep devotional places, you need to be a safe place for yourself emotionally. And a lot of men are just harboring grief or rage, sadness, resentment, bitterness that they don't know how to deal with. So of course, when a woman is expressing, and it's very intense when the feminine is expressing, how are you going to do that? There's just no way. So as a man, if you're not self-led, if you're not very integral and understanding of where you're at, what's happening for you, dialed in your own practices, your embodiment, your discipline, you don't feel safe and strong, you don't have tools, it's going to be really hard to do that for a woman, right? Or a partner.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah. Now, what's a woman's responsibility around her emotions? Because women also get confused, as in, okay, well, I need to be able to express whatever I want to express. Is there a limit? Can you talk about that, please, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, there's attunement that's needed from the feminine. So again, if the feminine, it's also an inside job on this side as well. If the feminine doesn't understand her own emotional body and how to deal with it and hold herself through some of that, not that she always needs to, but you need to have that tool set. Things like physical practice, a pleasure practice, emotional release, or alchemy, something, some kind of yoga, not just like asana, but a yoga. There's many types, right? It's going to be hard to like deal with a partner when they don't have the capability or the willingness to hold that for you. So a skilled feminine being is attuned. Can I express this? Especially when it's, from the shadow or from the negativity, which isn't bad, but it's just intense. And sometimes your partner may not be available to hold that. So you need to communicate that in the moment. And obviously, if it's a subconscious thing or a shadow, it's just going to happen. So that's a tough situation. And that's why a lot of men are like, oh, women are just crazy, or she's on her moon, or like there's all these things that get thrown around because the feminine has a lot of emotion and a lot of range. And her storms can be intense. And if the man, that metaphor, isn't a good sailor and doesn't know how to be in the storm, you can cause a lot of damage and mistrust.
Okay, so let's explore the storm. So let's say the female, has been keeping a lot in and the dam bursts one day and she just lets it rip. How does a healthy masculine deal with that?
Yeah, assuming he's self-sourced and he's solid. So he feels like, I am worthy, lovable. My emotions are in check. I feel good. And he's in his logos, his divine consciousness, his mind. He can just hold that and be a rock, be a mountain, a pillar. And no matter how much that storm blows, it's not going to affect him or push him over. And this is what women crave, right? Is just to be able to surrender and lean into the man. And so in that situation, it's the temptation for the masculine is to solve the problem, right? Or like, let's get rid of this. Let's move the emotion. Like, how do we move it? Instead of just being present with loving awareness. And, maybe there's support, maybe there's an action, maybe there's not, because the emotion will just rise and then it'll fall. So she may just need to cry or scream or feel or share. And then at some point, it will pass. And then you're back in the loving connection. And often you have built more intimacy or attraction in that time. And then there's more openness, there's more love available.
Okay, now this can go two ways. If the feminine is holding her rage, she could let it out as an attack on her man. Or if she's healthy and more aware, she can rephrase it so it's happening, but she's not attacking her man. Can you expand on that, please?
Yeah, this is the critical difference between a woman who has emotional awareness and attunement and intelligence versus, other women. And that is, if you employ blame, shame, or resentment or attack in any way, even subtly, and it's very subtle, the masculine is going to bring up defenses. There's just no way around it. It's automatic. It's instinctual. And so this is where, communication, authentic relating, nonviolent communication comes into play, and the woman's emotional practice, which the man can be support or witness to, but it's not aimed at him. So there's a lot of emotion. It's anger, or it's resentment, or it's sadness. Instead of blaming or projecting, you take responsibility. Hey, I'm feeling a lot. I'm feeling this. I need to release it. Can you hold me? Can you be with me while I feel this? This has nothing to do with you. And I know that logically, but logic doesn't fucking matter, because inner child and the emotions and the somatics are just going crazy. So let it ride. But you have to do that in communication and awareness. And, everyone's going to have to find their way to that. Again, having sisters, having other women to help you with that is also going to be powerful. If it's just you and your partner all the time, it's going to be a lot.
But what if she is mad at him? Like she's not bringing an issue that's happened at work or whatever. She is totally mad at her man. How can she express that without shame, blame, guilting? And how can he receive that without seeing it as an attack and putting up his defenses?
Yeah, I mean, she's gonna have to alchemize the edge of it first, so it doesn't like blunt on him. So there has to be some feeling on her own, and then she can bring it to him, ideally in a neutral space where it's like, again, not making it about him, making it about what she's feeling.
Right.
Because if she's holding the charge, she needs to take ownership of it, even if he quote unquote caused it or whatever. Okay. So it's like, hey, I'm feeling X, the emotion, the charge. I imagine or I feel that when you did Y, this is related to X, and here's my story about it. Just being
Mm.
fully radically honest, and then feeling what's there, and then allowing the masculine to respond, and coming into a place of compromise or action from that. And it's going to be delicate. It's going to have to be navigated in a certain way. It will be a lot easier if the man is able to also meet her in the place of accountability and ownership and own his role in it, and then not try to change her emotion about it or her story, and just be a witness and a loving companion on that journey. And this can get really sticky and can get into swamp pretty quickly, where it's like he sheds, she said, you did this, I did this, and then you can get stuck here. So that's why it's always better to go into some form of nonverbal space. And this can be meditation, this can be breath work, this can be somatic release or catharsis. This can be, again, going to the men's circle, the women's circle, getting an outside opinion or moving some of the energy before coming together.
Okay, let's put the shoe on the other foot. He's mad at her. Now, how does he deal with that and the communication that needs to go ahead?
Yeah, for the masculine, a lot of men will process alone or with men. So they need to digest some of that first. If they go straight to her with their resentment and anger, it's not going to be a great outcome usually. He needs to digest it. You need to sit with it for a bit. You might need to be physical. You might need to go into nature. You need to go, lift weights, move your body, fight, practice martial arts, go to other men, get a second opinion. Logically break it down, analyze it, move the energy, move your emotion, then bring it to the woman with clarity and releasing some of the resentment. And then when you're communicating with her, take ownership of what you're feeling, because it's your energy, you're holding the charge. But then let her know what you need, right? This is what I would need. This is what I would like. Are you available for that? Without blame and projection, which is tricky because it can be subtle.
Especially if you're reactive instead of responsive. How does a man learn, and a woman in wounded emotional energy, learn not to be reactive, not to be triggered and immediately lash out?
As Viktor Frankl describes, you have to create a space between the stimulus and the response. And the only way to do that is to cultivate self-awareness or consciousness or insight. And there's many ways. You need to practice, you need something to create that little gap between something happens and then you respond immediately or react. So you need to create the space. Create that with breath, create that with meditation. You can create that with understanding yourself and understanding what your triggers are, or what your, reactions are based on something internally, usually thoughts and emotions. So if you can track that in the moment and notice, there's that thing again. Normally I would just, start yelling or just, this is all your fault, and just take a moment. And then you can choose, like you gain great power from pausing. And so you have to cultivate that, and it's just practice. You will fuck up. You'll fuck up all the time, and it's okay. Just keep getting back onto the horse.
Awesome. Now, is it two halves that come together to make one in a perfect relation, a healthy relationship, or is it two wholes that come together as, I would say, three, because you've got the whole woman, the whole man, and then you've got the relationship?
Yeah, I mean, ideally it's the two wholes. For a lot of people at first, it's the two halves, and that's okay. It's part of the journey. Yes, and I agree that the Trinity does form, where the relationship itself is like the third entity, and then obviously children become a third entity physically. This is the power of union. When two people are sovereign and whole, they create this very powerful structure of beauty and love and truth.
The Vesica Pisces is
Right.
the sacred geometry around that, where the two circles overlap and the creative force is in the middle from the two holes, which can be, as you said, a child or just any creative endeavor, including the relationship. Wow. So, how would you describe a healthy relationship?
I mean, a healthy relationship, like you said, is all about creativity. It's the primal creative force. That's why men and women are drawn to one another. It's because we are divine counterparts. We're symbiotic. We're complements to each other, while also being opposites in some ways. This is the
Yeah.
paradox of life. So the healthy relationship dynamic has the creative force. It has libido or erotic eros energy. And that can create children, that can create art, that can create businesses, that can create leadership for the community. But that is really what's online. And it's being tended to and stewarded with
Mm.
awareness instead of being, sublimated or used as destructive force. So that's kind of the hallmark. And we've all seen this, this idea of the power couple, or, you think about, Sita and Rama, or, Radha and Krishna, or Buddha and Tara, Magdalene and Yeshua. There's all these like archetypes of what that energy looks like to different cultures and traditions. And it's the most powerful force on earth, which is why I believe it's under attack.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. When you understand the creative power of two healthy, a man and a woman, the masculine and feminine energy coming together in union, so powerful. I mean, you just look what it can create, as in a baby. So that's an incredible dynamic. Okay, now what haven't we mentioned about polarity that needs to be said, Kevin?
I mean, nothing's coming up per se. I feel like we've hit kind of all the angles. It's just more around, I guess the one final word is, it's not about learning a bunch of fancy concepts or like stacking on a bunch of, oh, look, this, it's like unlearning. Most of this is unlearning because your bones know, your DNA knows, your ancestors knew it. It's so instinctual. It's so natural. It's like you can shout at the river to stop flowing and try to flow upstream or get the river to reverse directions, or you can attune to the river and gain its momentum and energy. And that's really how I see this work.
Yeah. And the other bit that we've spoken a lot about, the dynamics of polarity, but the other aspect of this conversation is relationship mastery. Now, I know they're interrelated, but is there anything specific that needs to be said around relationship mastery?
I mean, relationship mastery and, understanding the relating space it's not just romantic. All life happens inside relationships. So once you understand the laws of reciprocity, the laws of exchange between beings, and obviously the intimate relationship is kind of the, sine qua non, it's the pinnacle of that. It just makes everything in life better. It's going to make your friendships better. It's going to make your love life better. It's going to make your business and career relationships better. And this is what humanity really needs right now. We need the village. We need relationships to be back online really strong. Because a lot of people are lonely, isolated, and separated from that. And that's why the world, when you look out at the world and you're like, how did we get here? What's going on? Why is there so much chaos? It's like, well, that's part of it. It's a big part of it.
And I know when we had our Heart Warrior interview, you spoke quite a lot about initiations and ceremony. Is that right? So, how
Yeah.
important is that to a man developing his awareness and his masculinity?
I mean, I think I said it in that interview, but it's worth restating. Life initiates women. So when they bleed, when they have a child, women are initiated, right? A girl is made a woman. Life does it automatically. Now, there's still women's work, there's still female elders and the matriarchal structures that are very powerful and are needed, but women will just get that initiation. Men need rites of passage, they need other men to help initiate them, elders. And you see this happening with men's work, with all the beautiful forms of men's work happening in Europe and Australia and America and all over the world, even in Asia. Men are returning to the rite of passage, which is a structural process, an initiation container where the boy can go in and the man can come out. And this is a relationship to the tribe and masculinity. It's also a relationship to oneself. It's like, can you die to the parts that need to die the pieces that no longer are serving? And can you give birth to the responsibility, the accountability, the power of being a leader, being a father, being a warrior, being a man in the village for your woman, for others, and for children, if that's your path. So this is very needed. And I think a lot of men are now realizing this, and we'll see men's work continue to grow this decade and become very, very successful and widespread because of it.
Now, this is a question that fascinates me, and I've asked it a few times of different heart warriors. Along the polarity scale from masculine to feminine, has everyone got their unique niche, or is healthy masculinity all in the top 20% and all healthy feminine females in their feminine in the other, and 20%? And some even take it further to 10%. Or are there some that are naturally 50-50? What's happening there?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. And people love to bring this up and say everyone's fluid, everything should be 50-50, especially online and social media. People say this all the time in comment sections. And I like the idea of it, and I get why people think that. I thought that for a while, but there's not a lot of evidence for it in reality.
Okay. Yeah.
There's just not. Now, it is fluid. Like, none of these are hard and fast rules. These are guidelines and frameworks. It's fluid. We're all fluid. Non-binary people, or people that don't resonate with the concept of masculine and feminine per se, are very fluid, right? And I think that's a smaller minority that are sacred, and that's their own work, and it's beautiful. But most people, you will fit somewhere on the spectrum. Life situations will demand different types of energy, and you'll find your way. And just trust your instincts, trust your body. The concepts we can get lost in. If you're successfully, in love, in business, in creativity, in health, you're going to be balanced in the way you need to. I think, the 80-20 rule, 80% one, 20% the other, is very common. 90%, 10%. It depends. I see all types of spreads, so to say.
Can you explain any situations where it would be healthy for the man to be in a relationship, the man to be in the feminine, and the woman to take up the masculine pole, even temporarily? Is that healthy, or does the man always have to stay in the masculine and the woman in the feminine?
It's going to depend on the individuals and the relationship always. Is it healthy? It can be. I don't think it's common, but say the woman is the breadwinner or is running a business, she'll be in her masculine, and the man may need to be in his feminine to nurture the children or nurture the home or be a safe emotional place. That can happen, even temporarily. I've seen it long-term for some couples where they actually enjoy those roles. Most couples, when they go into that energy, it's unconscious, and it's from a reversal of polarity or a confusion, and they actually don't want to be there.
Yes.
When you actually dig underneath the stories of, everything should be equal and 50-50, and my husband loves cleaning up the home and taking care of the kids, or being the emotional kind of mover, and I love hustling 80 hours a week. When you go deeper, and this has been my direct experience, I'm sure there are people that celebrate this, and awesome. When you go deeper, they feel trapped, or they feel like something's off. And so you see this a lot, where people have kind of set up that dynamic, but it's actually not serving them. And it's like there's a lot of healing and relief when you just admit that and actually seek out the energetic that's going to support you in the relationship.
Yeah, and it is an individual journey. I mean, some polarity teachers say that, for example, men should never do the dishes, and women should never earn more than their husbands. How do you sit with all that?
I mean, those are extreme statements that are based in a type of polarity, so I understand where they're coming from. Now, to prescribe that to people, I mean, it's great for marketing, but in reality, yeah, men will do the dishes and some women will earn more. And that's, in the modern context, kind of everything's available, everything's at play. In a hunter-gatherer, situation where your survival depended on nature and the hunt, and men and women surviving together, it's very different, right? Different needs, different aspects. So there's a lot of availability for both. For most couples, they're just going to have to, the more you become aware of these dynamics and experiment and play with them, you'll find what works for you. I don't like, I have my strong opinions, and I'm something of a empiricist. Like, I'm just watching and studying couples and people I'm working with and what people are saying and actually what they report. And I trust them. I'm like, I believe what they're saying. And then I'm forming conclusions. I can think about reality as I'd like it to be. Oh yeah, masculine, feminine polarity, it should look like this. This would be so great. But then there's the reality as it is. And so that is the tension. And that's why a lot of people are triggered by polarity work, or, people who write about it or speak about it and teach it, because it confronts a lot of our bullshit and our wounds around this stuff.
And I think a really important part that we mustn't leave out is when, well, usually women, I'd say, start losing sexual interest in their partners. Now, men might not understand why that's happening. Can you let them know basically what's happening there? Why the women are losing sexual interest in them?
Yeah, there's many reasons. They almost all have to do with, she's stopped respecting you and sensing you as not a threat, but as a force, as a power in her life, as like, whoa, I can't push him around. I can't manipulate him. I can't steer him off his course or his purpose. Mm. As soon as she knows that you will do what she says, not push back, not question, not hold or lead. If she has to lead, if she has to hold you, she has to mother you. This is the big one. She doesn't want to fuck her child. She doesn't want to have sex with a child. She loses the eros. She loses the spontaneity. You become a friend or a support. And then other men that are in that energy will become attractive to her. And this is why infidelity is so rampant. And so a lot of men need to take a step back and get back in the driver's seat in their own life if their woman is losing interest. Because as soon as they take up space and they become self-directed and led, their mission, their purpose, their sovereignty is more valuable. They stop putting the woman on the pedestal and they get back to what's really driving them. They start training their physical body again. They start eating well. They take space. They're not spending all their time with her. They're around other men that are also doing this. The attraction will instantly come back.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how just those tips, because my next question was going to be, what's something they could do today to prove that, that is the case, and you just said, but okay. But yeah, it is a big thing. And that lack of respect. And I think because men's bodies work differently to the feminine, we're aroused on an emotional level, whereas men more on a physical level. But once we lose respect for the men, we don't want to be, in that physical, loving, sexual relationship with them. Is there anything more that needs to be said around that, either for the feminine or the masculine, about, the sexual polarity dynamics?
Yeah, the other side also happens a lot, where the man will lose interest in the woman. And that's basically like, if she's withholding her emotion, she's withholding her pleasure and her pain. If she's become, again, the daughter, he's having to father her and her chaos, whatever. Yeah, he'll seek feminine energy elsewhere, whether that's porn or other women, and he'll just be drawn away because he can't feel you. That's what he wants. He wants to feel you and to desire you. And so as the woman, you need to become more interesting than, the television or his sports or whatever he's doing, where he's not feeling attracted. And so a lot of women have the rude wake-up call of, they're not in their opening, soft and intense expression, whether it's their voice, their emotional health. And again, it's probably because they're not being around other strong women. They're isolating themselves, getting stuck in the mothering role or their work role, whatever. And so the other version can happen as well.
And also, you know, to be aware that the time you do spend together, you're not using that time to attack your partner, either men or women, you know, criticize, manipulate, all those things. It's about really stepping into the healthy emotions to love and cultivate the relationship. So relationship mastery, have we touched on all that, or is there anything else that you want to add? Because I know you do have to get away in a few minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if people just implemented, like just take what most resonates from this talk, if you watched this far, if you just implemented 10% of what we've discussed here, you would have massive changes and results.
What's
Like the whole playbook is here.
What's one thing women can do today to step more into their feminine energy?
You know, even if you don't think of yourself as someone who can do this, dance and sing. So use your voice and express, move your body in a feminine way that feels good, that literally just feels good for no other reason. Like no one's watching, doesn't need to be a workout, doesn't need to be anything. So many women I've worked with and seen over the years and their partners I've worked with, this is one of the big unlocks. You know, you have to be in your body and your voice, like let your voice out. Practice when you're alone so you can feel safe when you're with your partner.
And are you saying, okay, so to dance in front of your partner?
I mean, yeah, if that feels good. I mean, dance for yourself first, but that's an incredibly powerful way to create polarity.
Yeah. Okay, so what can the men do today to increase their masculinity and polarity dynamics?
Yeah, I mean, if the woman is at the center of your reality and that's all you think about and care about, you need to flip that. So get back in touch with what you're most passionate about or what you are most giving to the world. What's the problem you're here to solve? What's the gift you're here to give? Get in touch with it. It doesn't have to be your career. Obviously, it's ideal if it is, but you got to get back on top of that. Get back in the gym, get back into whatever your training, physical modality, go into that and hang around men you trust. Hang around men that challenge you and that you respect, even if it's one man. Instantly, you will get back on track. You'll get back on the rails. You'll feel strength return.
Because it's interesting what you said, you know, if a man's focus is on the relationship, it's not on his mission, right? And a woman doesn't respect that. She might feel, oh, this is great, he wants to be with me 24/7, but are you saying that she'll lose respect for him in the end?
Over time, yes.
Fascinating. Wow, it's been a great conversation. Thank you so much, Kevin, again.
Thank you, Gemma. It's been amazing.
Yeah, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can search my name on all social media, Kevin Orosz, Orosz, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. KevinOrosz.com is my website. You know, I have online courses that are self-paced on this work. I also do one-on-one mentorship for clients. And I'm finishing up a group program right now called Primal Polarity, where men and women, singles and couples are, you know, going through an 8-week journey of embodying a lot of this stuff, practicing it, gaining the frameworks. And we'll probably launch another round of that that'll be upgraded towards the end of the year. So excited for that.
Fascinating. Yeah. And this really is such an important part of the evolution of humanity, to get our relationships working and to, you know, to get those two wholes coming together with a creative force instead of a destructive force, so we can, you know, create and build our new earth. Amazing.
That's right. That's it.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Lovely to have you back.
Thank you so much, Gemma. It's an honor.
Okay. Thank you. Bye. Everyone, I'll be back with another episode of Man Speak soon. If you could please like, share, subscribe, get the message out there so we can all build up these beautiful, healthy, juicy relationships. Bye.